Welcome, my friends, to this event with our friend Lee Lambert. I know in the beginning you were expecting to see an interview with Lee and I. However, as a result of what happens in project management, scope change, schedule change, we have had to modify the schedule. And that shows our agility, quite frankly. Now, today, instead of you seeing Lee and I go back and forth at it, we're going to use this as an opportunity to collect your questions and to see a little bit of Lee in action. I would love for you to do Lee and I a favor. Lee's fine, he's just chilling. But I would love for you to drop some questions because you obviously came to listen to this awesome colleague of ours. I would love for you to drop some questions for Lee. We are working on rescheduling our interview ASAP, okay? Lee is fine, but he's unable to be on here today as a result of, like I said, scope and schedule change, and he will be back stronger than ever. So please do us a favor. Drop the questions in the chat, wherever you're watching, whether on LinkedIn or whether on YouTube, wherever. And I'm going to give it about 10-minute time box. And within those 10 minutes, I will be expecting you to also watch a little bit of Lee in action. Okay, so right now, we're going to teleport ourselves to Sweden. We're going to hear a broadcast from Lee's adventures. Okay, I'm sure some of you have never seen this before. So just relax, just chill. And we're going to listen to Lee in action. And at the end of 10 minutes, I'm going to be looking for your questions. Thank you very much for your understanding. Let's get rolling.
And I'm going to use an example. I explained this to my smaller group this morning. I'm going to use an example project, the one that really has made my career, I think. I was offered an opportunity in 1988 to do a project that was basically going to save the company. This was a $1 billion company owned by the Engelhorn family in Mannheim, Germany. And the product was in-home use blood glucose monitoring systems for diabetics. So I'm diabetic, so I watch mine fairly closely, not close enough as my leg confirms. And so they're very popular because you're supposed to read your blood 4 or 5 times a day. Keep close up between 80 and 120. That's a safe level. And so they controlled at the time 70% of the marketplace. So there wasn't a lot out there, 70%. Johnson & Johnson created a competitive product that was faster. When you're reading a meter and you have to put blood on, wipe it off, wait a minute, it seems like forever. It's like don't watch a pot till it never boils. It's the same kind of thing. So speed was important. Accuracy of the reading was important because that determined, do I take insulin? Do I take medication or not? You get a bad read and you take some and you're dead. So there's some criticalities there. So they came up with one better. No question about it, better. And they began to take market share at 3 market share points a month. And each market share was $3 million on the bottom line. So the Engelhorn family was getting a little nervous. So they wanted to the only way they could stop the bleeding was to create a project better than Johnson & Johnson's. So that was their goal. So they had interviewed quite a few project managers, I'm told, until I had trained a couple of them in just a public class, and they had recommended that he talks to me. So he brought me in, a guy named Jack Van Kampen, as DuPont turnaround specialist, big guy, 6'8", about 300 pounds, hated people. Hated people. In fact, we learned later on, if you actually knew Jack, that's because you'd been fired. Because that's the only time he would talk to you. And so he brought me in and he explained the whole situation. I felt so bad about it. And I wasn't diabetic at the time. And so he said, what do you think, Lee? He said, your reputation is good. What do you think? I said, well, I think we could do that. When do you want it done? He said, well, we need it in 3 years or we're going to be out of business. I said, wow, that's a brand new product and all the peripherals that go with it in 3 years. He said, yeah, that's what we got to have. He said, can you do it or can't you? I said, well, yeah, I think I can. I think I can. But before I say I can for sure, I have 3 things I need to have negotiated before I take this on. I mean, this is my career. This is my reputation. If I take this on and fail, I'm just another consultant, okay? So he says, what do you need? And these are all things that you don't have, so I want to make you jealous. He said, what do you need? I said, I need unlimited money. He said, what exactly do you mean by unlimited money? I said, I want all the money. I want no one able to override my decision to spend money. He said, all the money? I said, yes, all the money. He said, okay. I'm thinking, well, hell, that was easy. That was easy. He said, what else you got? He said, well, the other thing that'll be important is that I'm able to select the people that will be on my team. We had estimated about 200. I want to be able to select the people, handpick the people, based on gathering of information, talking to peers. I want to be able to handpick those people. He said, we have people scattered all over the site. You're going to interview, you're going to talk. Well, no, you let me decide how to pick them. I want to handpick them. He said, okay. Damn, now I'm thinking airplane, car, I'm going to go for the... He said, what else you got? He said, you got 3 things. I said, well, the third thing, actually, maybe the most important, I need that team to be co-located. He said, I don't understand. What do you mean co-located? I said, together. They need to be together. I want to facilitate ease of communication, spontaneity, no formal set time to meet. I want this to be a freewheeling operation, all in the same building. He said, I can't do that. He said, we have 11 buildings. Where would you put them all? So I walked over to his window, which overlooked a beautiful lake, and pointed to a building that had just been completed. And I said, you see that building? I said, what is that building? He said, that's our new R&D center, and we're bringing people in from Germany, which immediately made me bothered. We're bringing people in from Germany to head up the R&D function for new product design. I said, wow. I said, you know, that is a really nice building. I said, and it's a nice location, everything. I said, that'd be the building I want. He said, well, I can't do that. He said, Jerry Muller was the R&D guy coming. He said, Jerry's not going to go for that. And I said, well, then I'm not going for the project. I said, I said 3 things, and you only gave me 2. So I appreciate the confidence you had in me to even invite me to come, but I'm not willing to risk my reputation on something that I think has a high probability of failure. And so I said, thanks, but no thanks, and drove back to Ohio, about a 3-hour drive. Drove back to Ohio. That's on a Friday. On Monday, Jack called me and gave me the billing. So now, you see what Jack, smart guy. He just called my bluff. He's in the game now, and he called my bluff. He said, okay, big guy, I gave you all 3 things, deliver. Well, that was an incentive for sure. And so we gathered the team together. It took about 3 or 4 weeks to get my team. And we met and went through. And a lot of what Carol talked about, I had to get in people's heads to make sure they were thinking, that their thinking brain was on, and get them to understand the mission that I had accepted for them to get their buy-in. And I said, anybody who's not willing to live to a schedule that is going to put you at work more than you've ever worked in your life, now's the time to back out. There'll be no resentful, no punishment for not being part of the team. 7 people walked out that day. 7 out of about 203 people walked out. Was I upset with them? No, I respected them. And so we backfilled with the next choices. and the team began to work. Now, so that you understand where I'm going with a lot of this stuff, I'm just going to shorten the topic. We delivered the project. They regained market share at a dramatic rate, and 3 years after we delivered that project, Roche Labs, which I'm sure most of you know Roche, acquired this little $1 billion German company for $11 billion. So I'm responsible for an $11 billion acquisition. I like to say that. It sounds impressive, doesn't it? Yeah, I like to say that. To this very day, and I use my product, believe it or not. I got diabetes about 2 years later. I thought about suing them that they gave it to me, but lawyers said, no, that won't fly. And so I started using it's called AccuCheck, and it's everywhere. If you know anybody diabetic, there's a high probability that they use AccuCheck. And I still use it to this very day. Now it's morphed a few times, sizes, shapes, minor changes, but basically it's the same product. And so it's got sustainability. Is that the word we like to use? What's the other word? Sustainability. Oh, innovation. We use that word a lot. And empowerment. Oh my God, I believe in empowerment a lot. And so that project was very successful. Now, what happens is, I think that Carol may have reflected, I don't think I mentioned this to you this morning. When the project's over, your stress level comes at a right place, okay? So when it was over, I went into Jack. Of course, he was happy. He was happy. And so what he said to me was, thank you. I said, that's it? That's it? Thank you? He said, no, thank you. I really appreciate it. He said, in fact, you did such a nice job. We have 2 more we want to run just like that. I said, not with me, you don't. And not with that team. Now, I did say to him, give me a different team. Give me a different set of people. I can replicate that. But that team is expired. They need downtime. And so he said, no, we got to get these 2. And I said, I'm leaving. He said, you can't leave. I said, I'm under contract. My contract's over. I'm leaving. He said, no, really, Lee, we need you to stay. I said, I'm not staying. Now, I was married at the time, although I wasn't sure who my wife was by the time I got home. And so I said, I'm sorry to say I'll try to recommend someone if you'd like, but I'm going home. He said, okay, wait a minute, I've got a deal for you. If I were to give you a check for $30,000, would you agree to come back if I need you? Wow, I thought about that for 5-6 seconds. And I said, 30,000. I said, yes, I'll give it to you. This was on Monday. He said, Friday before you leave, I'll give you a check for $30,000. I said, that sounds like a deal to me. And so I got my check on Friday, said my goodbyes to everybody, and went back to Ohio. He never called. Now, I'm not a mathematical whiz, but when you take 30,000 divided by the number of hours I spent, it's a pretty high rate. 30,000 for nothing, okay? So that was an experience that paid big dividends at the end, but no one knew it at the beginning. And so the reward that he gave us all, because he was totally against what we came up with, my research people said, if Jack wants to identify spontaneously some way to recognize our effort, that's fine, but don't hold that carrot. I learned that at GE. Don't hold that carrot out there and then keep moving it. And so at the end of the process, he came in, gathered everybody together, wanted to take credit for this, and said, as a reward for your efforts, I'm going to send you and your significant other to Hawaii for 2 weeks on me. Nobody bitched about that. Nobody turned that down. And I reminded Jack after, you got that for a lot less than $2 million, I can guarantee you. And it had a bigger effect. So there has to be something at the end besides I'm done. Some way to mentally know what you've accomplished. And that's the idea I want to build. Well, in order to know what you've accomplished, you have to know what you plan to accomplish. And that's where project management comes in. If I don't have a thing to measure, everything looks like it's going well. And so that's where it comes in. Now, the bad news is your projects will never be on time, probably won't be within budget, but you'll feel good about the process you went through. And unfortunately, you won't have the decision-making capability to really impact the overall. But I think what I've learned over the 50-some years that I've been doing it is that without project management, I'm in big trouble, because you can't mentally deal with all the things that go on in a project. Okay. All right. Any initial questions before I fire up here?
All right. Great stuff from my buddy Lee. You know, he always delivers the goods and more. For those of you who are just coming, I put out a request for those of you who are here to listen to Lee to please put some questions in the chat. Lee is chilling right now. He's well, but we have had to reschedule due to what happens on projects. I mean, you just heard his story. Before we go into the next section of today's event, I want to ask you, did you listen to what Lee just said? Did you listen to all the twists and turns? There are a number of things we can learn from what Lee shared. Number one, when you are given an opportunity, always bargain for the best. Don't just settle, because if he settled for one of those three things, he wouldn't have got the other two. All right. So in the world of the PMP, which I know many of you are familiar with, you hear the term trade-offs. Lee gave us an example of why you should trade off. It's going to be for the greater good of the project. It's going to be for the greater good of the team, maybe even your greater good, as you heard him talk about. Don't you want a blank check for $30,000, never to have to return that again? That was quite the example. One of the other things I've learned from Lee that I want to share before we go into our next section is the concept of the paper PMP. And the paper PMP is just someone who stops at being a PMP and doesn't go the extra mile, doesn't study, looks for the easiest PDU route, and all those bad behaviors. We don't want to be like that. Lee has also shared the concept of working on your own terms. You know, like towards the end of the story, you heard him talk about Jack asking him to come back and saying, "Oh, you can't leave. You got to come back, and you got to come back on these terms that I want." And Lee said, "No, my contract is over. That's it." You know, and then he ended up getting some free money. The next part of this event, my friends, we're going in our time machine to Sweden. And many of you know the story of how Lee is an ambassador for the PMI. And I see a lot of you coming through. I would love for you to drop some hearts for Lee, because Lee is going to be able to see this by tomorrow. Okay. So I want you to drop some comments. I want you to drop some hearts, drop some likes. I also want you to share this. So you do know the story of Lee being the epitome of the ambassador for the PMI. Okay. And some of you have heard the story about his leg, right? It wasn't a shock. But I'm going to play for you an extended video of Lee in action, one of the most engaging speakers that we have in the world of the PMI at large. Not only does Lee bring the stories to life, they're very engaging and very impactful. And his sense of wit is just amazing. His timing is impeccable. Let's journey in our time machine and go back to one of Lee's events in Sweden. I guarantee you this will be the best use of your time in a long time, because you're going to be hearing from who I call a PMP, PMI icon. You know, he's got the title of PMI fellow, but beyond that, he's an icon for what a servant leader should be in this world of the PMI. When I think about my service to my local chapter, I want to give myself a slap on the head after listening to Lee's stories. Okay, so let's listen to Lee, the brilliance of the man. Here we go. Live in Sweden.
Very welcome, Lee, and peace.
Thank you very much. This is so out of my nature to sit down, but my doctor warned me that I shouldn't be here. And like any good project manager, I didn't listen. And so I've had 6 hours today of trying my leg out. I still prefer the real one. This one's a little hard to deal with. So I want to spend some time. I am overwhelmed with this program. I feel as though I am among the real stars of this process. When I hear what Sweden has done in terms of project development and innovation, and I think about the workshop that I just did, it's so insignificant comparatively. But one of the things that I've learned over the years, and I started in project management. Well, let me ask you this. How many of you were born after 1966? Could you just raise your hands? I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. And during that process, you can imagine the learning that's taken place. And when I started, I didn't start out as a project manager. I started out as a design engineer, decided very quickly that I was a lousy engineer and I needed something that could take advantage of my strength. My strength is people. That's my strength. And so I naturally gravitated to project management through a series of events, which I'll give you some information on. But as we went through the process, I began to realize the importance of the concept of project management. Now, when I started, nobody really knew what project management was. In fact, people who were project managers did that in their spare time, like it was an additional add-on to their technical responsibility. And so as we gravitated beyond that to say, I can't just be a technical person if I'm going to manage the project. So now we have a separate entity. So I started to do that, and I talked to a fellow at a conference once, and he said, I think you should be in project management. And I said, what is that? And he said, well, I'll tell you, the thing about project management is that project managers don't do work. And I'm going, well, hell, that's the place I want to be. I've never been a big fan of work. And so I looked into that a little bit, and I'll be darned if I didn't find there's some accuracy to that statement. And I repeat it often to remind myself, if I start doing work, I have to back off. Project managers don't do work. They get work done through others. And I think that's something we have to take into account in every project, is that we have to maximize the performance by capitalizing on the human resource that's available to us. So let me give you a little of the past. Now, having been in the business 55 years, having been in PMI, now I'm going to be honest with you why I joined PMI. It's no big innovative thing, but I got a job that was very project management oriented. So I looked up, we didn't have Google back in those days, but I looked up references, and it said there's this association that was formed in 1969 that their focus is improving the capabilities of project management. So I thought, well, heck, that's where I need to be. So I talked my organization into sponsoring the membership. Little did I know the impact that decision would make on my life. It's been unbelievable. So in 1978, I began to volunteer. That's what it's all about. Lee, what are you doing on Saturday? I don't know. Well, we've got a project that we need someone to come in and help us run. And so that's where it started. It started innocently enough. I didn't know I was going to be all over the world talking about projects. I just thought I was going Saturday to a little volunteer thing. So I started to do that, and as I did that, I learned more and more about the concept of project management, that it wasn't a hobby, it was actually a profession, and that was the reason PMI was formed, was to extend that profession. And so I started to keep track, and what I thought to myself was, you need to be what I call an early adopter as new things come into play. And gosh knows I'm going to talk about some of that I've heard here today and yesterday. As new things come into play, I don't want to be on the catch-up phase. I want to be on the leading edge, early adoption of these new concepts so that I can take full advantage of them. And our business of project management is ever evolving. It's never going to stop. So if you think you're there, get over it. You're not. So it started for me with the concept of, some of you may have heard of this, work breakdown structure. Ever heard of that? WBS. Now, a lot of you are saying, oh, I know what the BS stands for. No, this is work breakdown structure, okay? The Department of Defense introduced that concept in the 60s. And all of a sudden, people were saying, well, that's the way we should do project management, defining all the work that needs to be done. This is the leading edge of project management. So that sustained for a while. And then all of a sudden, and this was really what propelled me into a career, came the idea of earned value. Now, if you've not been exposed to earned value, God bless you. Because it's a sophisticated application, but without reservation, I still to this day believe it's absolutely the most realistic way to measure and manage projects. Everyone doesn't agree. GE had a big contract with the government to do a nuclear reactor, and they were imposed to use earned value. Everybody screamed and raved, and so I had already determined by then, as I mentioned, as an engineer, I'll use a technical term here, I sucked. I really, it wasn't what I wanted to do, and so I volunteered to train 300 engineers. That in itself is an unbelievable task, to train 300 engineers on how to use earned value. And this was a requirement of a validation by the U.S. government. So if we were going to continue the contract, we had to pass a validation. It wasn't as hard as the PMP exam, but it was hard. And so we had to do that. So I spent 1.5 to 2 years training these 300 people. And as I did that, I realized that this is my future. Training people how to be more effective in project management. And again, because it didn't require any work, I just had to share my knowledge with people in what will add value to what you do as a project manager. And as I started to do that over and over again, it created new opportunities. The networking that's gone on these last 2 days, I must say, and I do this all over the world, I must say, y'all get how to network. You really do. I mean, it's really hard to get away from you once you get a hold of me. And so I sometimes had to set some limits on how long we could talk. And then came the evening events. Oh my God. The evening event went on and on and on. And so, but again, I realized this is where I'm supposed to be. So once we joined PMI, I changed jobs from General Electric to a company called Battelle Memorial Institute. It's the largest contract research organization in the world, and I was told if you can train PhDs, you can train anybody. And so I thought, I'll give that a try. And so I joined the Battelle Memorial Institute, which was 70% PhDs. Now, I have an undergraduate in mechanical engineer, and so I felt a little intimidated. And so I started to expose them to earned value. Okay, again, another government contract. I actually had to write a book to use as a facilitator with them to justify the fact that project management was real. I wrote this book as a training aid. It ended up being published. I have 15,000 copies in distribution. And it's the easiest, simplest book. I made money. I made money on this thing. It was unbelievable. And I just sold some to a firm in Atlanta, just 100 copies. It was out of print years ago. So I had to get 100 copies made because they've decided to implement earned value. I thought that had gone away. I thought that was one of those passing things. And so I did that. And as I did that, I was asked to come to Columbus, Ohio to help form a new division called the Project Management Division. How appropriate was that? And I said, sure, I'll come. And then I had to ask my wife. And she said, where is it? And I said, in Ohio. She said, never been. Never been. She said, I'm not going. I said, no, come on. Listen, this is an opportunity. She said, no, if it's in Ohio. And I said, no, it's an opportunity. This is a leading edge opportunity to implement project management in a resource and development environment. And she said, that doesn't mean anything to me. Does it have a pool? That's what she had. Does it have a pool? I said, we'll get you a darn pool, okay? And so she eventually gave in, so to speak. And so when I got there, the new guy, which came from the old place, so he's the one that brought me. He was a PhD nuclear scientist, and he said, you need to implement project management here. And I said, well, okay, but I said, is there a PMI organization here? And it turns out, many of you don't know, I doubt you even know this, Luann, Columbus, Ohio was the 3rd chapter chartered in the world. There was Houston, San Francisco, Columbus, Ohio. I'm going, why? Why? Well, it turns out there was a university professor at Ohio State who had been bought into project management. He formed the chapter. So that's pretty impressive. So when I got there, I said, well, how do you look them up? They gave me a name. I called them up and they said, well, we're on probation right now. I said, what do you mean we're on probation? We have 3 members. 3. And 2 of them are thinking about moving. And I said, well, that's not going to work. I said, if we're going to have a project management chapter, we at least ought to have some people that are in project management. So I talked to my senior level, my PhD guy, and I said, listen, here's an opportunity. I didn't know at the time it included volunteering to be president. I didn't know that. But here's an opportunity to make a linkage between a project management organization and a commercial organization to benefit that. He says, okay, do your thing. Do your thing. See what you can come up with. 2 months later, two months later, very proud of this. 2 months later, our membership was 107. 107. Now, I have to admit, because I want to be completely transparent, 103 of them worked for me. So the recruiting was much easier than you might do. But I'm always convinced, I'm sort of like the person who thinks about religious converts. If you've ever known a religious convert, they're much more committed to the religion than the ones who weren't converted, had just grown up that way. Well, all converts are that way. So I figured, even if I have to lie a little bit, I can convert them into project management, and then they'll see the value. So that's what we did, and I began to build that chapter. They're now at a little over 2,000, I just wrote an email today saying, by the way, I've never done a keynote for my chapter. Is there any chance you could squeeze me in? And they said, well, we've really got quite a lineup. I said, really? Okay, thanks a lot. He said, we do have one of the tracks you can go talk in. And I said, well, I've done that 6 or 8 times. So I look at these opportunities to try to get you to understand. There's really smart people. Well, this group over here, not so much. But there's really smart people in the room, and you understand. You're here. You come to these programs. You don't come for the fun of it. You come to network. You come to learn new trends. You come to share your experiences with your peers, and that's why you're here. So the opportunity is one that I revel in the chance to do that. So we were very successful in that chapter, and out of that came an invitation to join a very select committee of 5 people. I think they were emulating the organizational founding. They had 5. So we got 5 people to start a project management certification process. There wasn't one in place. Never had been at that time. And PMI, under the guidance of, I think Ken Hartley was president at the time. He's the only guy, passed away by the way, sadly. He's the only guy that's been president twice. I mean, talk about a fool. President twice. And he was president. And what he basically said, the certification is our way of validating that we are a recognized profession. And so we really need to make this happen. So I got a letter that said, we'd like to have you be one of the 5, and your area of expertise will be R&D and consulting. And those will be the areas that you focus on. But our goal is to develop a certification process and all the bells and whistles that go with it to expose to people that have chosen this profession. We did some surveys, and we found that one of the things that attract people to organizations like PMI is a certification process. It gives them some ownership. It recognizes the professionalism. So it was a definite decision that the impact was going to be good. So we recruited additional volunteers. Obviously, we went far beyond the 5 that started it. And after 3 years of development, we rolled it out in October of 1984. So it took 3 years, basically, to formulate the process. It took so much more than the questions that we were looking for. It's all the support structure. It's one of the things that I had some direct responsibility for that y'all owe me for is PDUs. I love PDUs. People, you gotta have them, you see. That was the idea. We'll get you certified, but then we'll keep you there with PDUs. And so, unfortunately, and I'll tell a little bit more about that, unfortunately, that's morphed a little bit, and now it's somewhat of a numbers game. So now it's not about which PDUs you got. Did you get 60? Because anybody that's ever let their PMP expire knows you don't want to do that. If you want to have a PMP, that means you got to take it over. You don't want to do that. So at the time, we rolled it out. We had 55 people, okay? And we got about 300 people here. We had 55. And at that time, we only administered the exam once a year at what was then called the symposium. So once a year, you had a crack at it. And 55 people took the exam. 39 passed. So we had 39 people who were among the first people to become certified. Nobody even knew what that meant. And certainly it didn't get any public relations activity as a process. But we began to get professionalized, okay? So we rolled that out. Everybody was excited about it. Every question was created by some volunteer like you and I. All the questions, we didn't have any specialized question development people. They were people who, that was their profession. And they said, these are the kinds of questions I'd like to be sure people can answer. So we ended up with, and back then, you see, the body of knowledge, the PMBOK, and this is kind of an ironic thing, and many people don't know this. We began conducting PMP certification testing before there was officially a PMBOK. Made it a lot easier to pass because you had no basis. And so they were just volunteer questions. The first publication of an official PMBOK, there were people who would say white papers began, but it was 1996. So, but by then we'd been doing implementation for 10 years. And so we had 320 questions. They were 8 body of knowledge areas, 40 questions per, and you had all day to take the exam. 4 hours, 4 body knowledge in the morning, 4 body knowledge in the afternoon. And you had to pass all 8 body of knowledge areas. Now, we did give a little bit of levity in the terms of you could fail 2 and just have to take those 2 over. But if you failed 3, you got to take the whole exam over. And so it put the fear of God in people is what it did. It made them realize that I don't want to fail this. And so most people took the full 8 hours. Now, in 1995, I was given, as were the 5 people on the original committee, the authorization to take the exam. You see, PMI in its almost unbelievable attention to potential conflict of interest and keeping everything on the, quote, up and up. They wrote a letter to us on the committee that, oh, by the way, thank you for your work, and you're not allowed to take it for 10 years. Well, I thought we'd be grandfathered in. I thought they'd say, as a reward for your work, you're certified. No. They said 10 years from now, we will authorize you to take the exam. So that stunned me a little bit. I was a little bit surprised. So I waited 10 years. I did some work. I did a few things. And I was teaching, a lot of teaching. I quit working in 84 because once we got the certification process, I decided training people on how to do that's going to be my thing. And so I was doing that. At the end of the 10 years, I'll be darned if I didn't get a letter from PMI saying, you are now authorized to take the exam. Well, that was just the best news I ever got. I went home and told my wife, I said, Carolyn, I got a letter. They say, I can take the exam. What do you think? She said, if you don't, you're going to look pretty stupid. And so I said, okay. So I studied for a couple hours and set up an appointment with an IBM and AT&T group down in Altamont Springs. So we were obviously doing it more than once a year by then. And so I went down to Altamont Springs, and it was going to be the 8-hour test, the old body of knowledge. And I sat for the exam. I was apprehensive. I'll admit to you. I was apprehensive. I'm a relatively cocky guy, but I'm thinking to myself, I've seen some of the, you don't get to see the test. You don't get to see the exam. Those of us who are on that, we didn't get to see the final exam, and now nobody gets, it's the jewels. I mean, it's what the organization promotes because it recognizes our profession. And so I was a little apprehensive. So I went down there thinking to myself, look, I kind of followed Carol's advice, just kind of let it go. Just make sure my thinking brain is operating, and sat for the exam. I finished the exam in 2 hours and 45 minutes. The whole exam. When I got up and left at 2 hours and 45 minutes, people began to laugh. They thought I was giving up. They thought that I had thrown in the towel. Well, I finished in 2 hours and 45 minutes, and again, things have changed. Back then, I wanted to know if I passed. I mean, you want to know if you passed? They said, we'll let you know in 6 weeks. So 6 weeks had to go by before I even knew if I passed. And I walked out of there feeling pretty good about it, but you never know. It's kind of like a jury trial. You never know. And so in 6 weeks, sure enough, here come the letter, and I got 100%. 100, that's 320 questions, 100% in 2 hours and 40, that's unbelievable. In fact, that's a lie. 2 hours and 40, you kidding me? We don't tell you what you got. All we tell you is you pass or fail. So here's the way I interpret it. I'm kind of that kind of guy. If I see pass, I translate that into 100%. No, who can argue with you? Nobody knows the difference. And so as we looked at that, here's what I want to point out to you. That we are truly in a growth condition. When Luann throws that graphic up that said we have 700,000 plus members, that's almost pathetic. The number of people involved in project management is so substantially bigger than that number that you have to fall back to the 7 out of 10 that have never heard of us. We need to spread the word. And not just to get members, that's the easy part. Members become, this is another thing I take issue with. I have to be careful. I have 2 board members here, so I got to be a little bit cautious. But I take a little bit of liberty with this idea. And Pierre, our new CEO, quotes it oftentimes, and I dropped him an email. I occasionally drop emails. And I dropped one to him about this because we tend to quote 14,000 volunteers. That seems to be the number we're using these days. I got to tell you, in my view, that's substandard from what we really have. If I look at this room, there's 300,000 times that we can do it. If I take 300, multiply it by the 10 opportunities you may have, that's how many volunteers we have. So if I look at it from that perspective, and I think this organization is about volunteerism. I mean, we've got a lot of other things going on, but at the end of the day, it's about volunteering to improve the profession and the people in it. I think we have over 700,000 volunteers because every one of us at some point in time volunteer to do something that supports the idea of project management. So we looked at that, and we so that you understand, it's kind of like a band. If you're in sync, have you ever heard of in sync? I'm dating myself here. In sync, it goes back a ways, okay? Some people say they were overnight success. Oh, how about this? ABBA. Ever heard of them? ABBA. If you haven't heard of ABBA, where the hell you been? They were overnight success. No, they weren't. It takes a long time. So I look at that from the standpoint of the PMP. My PMP number, well, my member number is 3935. That's a really tiny number. That's my member number, but my PMP number is 6,018. So at the end of 10 years, we only had 6,018 members that had qualified and passed to PMP. Well, things changed dramatically in the next year or two when IBM, Motorola, AT&T, every major corporation in America embraced the PMP as their way to qualify project managers. Well, once that happened, the line went vertical. Once that happened, we were training and giving that exam dozens of times through the year. I myself personally trained 3,000 IBM people. 3,000, that's just me. So the numbers took off. And unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, some of that was due to peer pressure. Some of that was, hey, Bob's got a PMP. Did you get yours? You didn't? And all of a sudden, yeah, oh yeah, I did. I got mine. Well, so I want to make sure you understand that having the PMP, how to say this, some of you are probably going to take exception. I always tell my students, if you will, and I don't believe in boot camps and that kind of thing, so longer term. But if I tell people that are excited about getting their PMP, and since I have 100,000 LinkedIn followers, I get a lot of it, excited about the PMP, I congratulate them. Obviously, I write a note of congratulations, but I then go on to say, please remember that getting your PMP is the beginning of your journey, not the end. If we take getting the PMP as the completion of our journey in project management, we are seriously short-circuiting the process, because now you have the foundation that you can build upon. Many people, I call them paper PMPs. They're people who took a boot camp, who did a crash course in study, passed the PMP, and then went back to doing things the way they've always done them, okay? And in big groups where I have an opportunity, I won't do it here because I don't want to embarrass anybody, but the one of the things I'll say is, how many of you have PMPs? Well, let me ask that. How many have your PMP? Okay, now that I see some that don't, I immediately want to know what your problem is, but we'll go on to that later. So how many of you now, in this case, different question, how many of you work with or in association with PMPs who aren't? Yeah, there's some hands. The reluctant hands are sitting next to the one that they want to raise their hand about. And so out of that, you can make a rationalization that says those are paper PMPs. And out of 1,500,000, this is my estimate, I have no validation, out of 1,500,000, I'm guessing we have at least 200,000 paper PMPs, okay? Meaning just that, they passed the PMP exam. And that's great, I'm glad they did, but if they haven't built upon that foundation, they're not realizing the value that we have. So we look at that from that perspective. So we're not about more PMPs. That's not what we're about. It's gratifying to know I played a role in that, but it's not about how many you have. It's about are they doing good in the community? And this year and last year, really, we started this idea of community. Now, I've been with every managing director since day one. And in the beginning, our managing director was a volunteer role. And so I've been with all of them. There's been some good ones. There's been some bad ones. There's been some that are okay. We have a good one right now. And one of the things that Pierre has landed on that I can't believe how beautiful it is the establishment of the PM community. And I learned when I was in, by the way, because of PMI, I lost my leg. And I don't hold it against them. They're nice people. But the fact of the matter is, I would have preferred to keep it. And so I was on a 4-country tour, and I saw I was having a little problem with my leg. But usually if I just take a lot of antibiotics, the infection goes away and everything's fine. So that's what I did. And it started to get a little better. But then when I got to Indonesia, it started to get worse. And so when I got to Sri Lanka, it was pretty bad. By the time I got to Romania, one toe was completely black. So I went to hospital in Romania. I still had one to go. I had Portugal. That was the last country on my tour. And so I went to the hospital. They made me go to the hospital in Romania. And I saw one of their doctors, and I assume he's very well qualified. He looked at my foot and my leg, and he said, "We need to take that off." I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "Yeah, that's got to come off." I said, "Well, no, I just need some more antibiotics." He said, "No, it's too late. It's too late. It's gone, and it's moving up. And if you don't get it off, you could lose your whole leg." And so I said, "So you're recommending surgery in Romania?" He said, "That's correct." And I said, I'll pass. We have some doctors that I have a lot of faith in the United States. I love Romania, don't get me wrong, but I don't want you operating on me. He wrote a letter. Evidently, they have insurance in Romania because he was afraid of getting sued. He wrote a letter saying, "Mr. Lambert has refused my advice to have his leg amputated." And they said, "Well, let's get you home." And I said, No, I still got Portugal. And I said, "I'm committed to Portugal. I got to go." So they got me to Portugal. It wasn't my highest performance activity for sure, but I stuck it out. I gave my keynote presentation. They rushed me to the airport, and 24 hours later, my leg was gone. And it's all because of PMI. I've never really mentioned it to Pierre, but I said, they owe me. Because if it wasn't for PMI, I wouldn't have been in Indonesia. Wouldn't have been in Portugal. And so you got to realize there's a downside to being enthusiastic about what you do. And I asked him the other day, I said, what's the chance that this leg might have some problems? They said, well, if you would manage it appropriately, you wouldn't have to deal with that, because the life expectancy of someone who loses both legs maybe 5 years if you're lucky. I have a lot of plans that go beyond 5 years. So I'm managing my diabetes. And fortunately, I had a project. One of the reasons that I'm so committed, I had a project that I was told was impossible. This can't be done. And it was my very first consulting role after leaving a commercial organization. And I was recruited to do this project that was the impossible project. In fact, PMI wrote it up later as the impossible project. And so this project was a medical diagnostics project. We've heard some of the medical diagnostic things we talked about. And this one was to create a new meter for in-home use to determine what your blood glucose levels are for diabetics. And there's a certain range that you want to stay within to be safe. So, and I'm diabetic. Now, I wasn't diabetic when I started this project. I considered a lawsuit about that, thinking they may have given me diabetes. But it turns out that that's not true. And so what we had to do was we had to take an existing product that had 70% market share in 1988. 70% market share. Now, at that time, diabetes was an issue, but not like it is today. The diabetes in America, for sure, I don't know how it is here in Europe, is vertical. It's a dangerous thing. And so 70% of the market share was still a lot of money. The company was owned by the Engelhorn family in Mannheim, Germany. And they had pioneered this product and captured the market. You know how first to market grabs the market share. And so Johnson & Johnson in the U.S. came up with a new meter that was faster, easier to use. Cheaper doesn't come into play in medical diagnostics oftentimes. They have, it's not price fixing, they say, but everything seems to cost about the same. So Johnson & Johnson murdered us in the market. And what they basically said, the marketing people said, if you don't come up with a leapfrog the leapfrog market product, you will close your doors in 3 years' time. That's a $1 billion company. I mean, that's not bad money. I mean, it took me 2-3 years to make that kind of money. So you look at that and you realize there's a lot at stake. So now you see where you got you stakeholders. We talk about my program upstairs. We talk about stakeholder management. People don't understand this. The ultimate stakeholder in that process are the diabetics. They're the ones that have their life at stake. And so we didn't really think about that. So we had a lot of issues in stakeholder management. But what we decided was it was impossible. So they brought in a turnaround specialist, a guy named Jack Van Kampen, a Dutch guy, by the way, who was a turnaround specialist. And he was 6'8", 300 pounds, hated people. Hated people. Nothing like hating people to get a team motivated, right? In fact, we had a joke that we'd say, if you've ever met Jack Van Kampen, it's because he fired you. Otherwise, he didn't mix with the people. And so he recruited me because I had trained a couple people in their organization. It's called Behringer Mannheim was the name of the company at the time. And so they brought me over and said, what do you think? Would you be able to do that? And I said, what's a normal time? Well, 3 years is a normal time to develop and implement a new product like that. So 3 years. And we've had a drop dead date that we're going to go out of business in 3 years. He said, what do you think? Can you do it? And I said, well, hell, of course I can do it. Of course I can do it. I do have some requirements, however. He said, what do you mean? And I said, well, there's 3 points that we have to negotiate before I'll make a commitment. And remember, I'm putting my personal reputation on the line. Because if I don't get this done in 3 years and this company goes out of business, guess who gets the blame? Okay? So I said, so I want to make sure I've got the best chance going in. So I said, what do you want? What do you want? And I knew I had leverage because they're going out of business. If I don't, I said, okay. I said, I've got 3 things. The first one is I want all the money. And he looked at his head, shook his head, and he goes, "Oh, what do you mean by all the money?" I said, "I want all the money. I don't want to have to ask for approval to spend money. If I decide we have to do it to meet our 3-year schedule with a quality product, I want all the money." He took a few seconds and said, "Okay." I thought that was easy. I thought it'd be much harder. It was a $1 billion company. I just got all the money. And so I thought, well, I better follow this up quick. He said, "So what else do you want?" I said, "Well, this is an important one." They had about 1,100 people scattered around this campus in Indiana. And I said, "I want to be able to handpick the team." Now, we had estimated around 200 people. I want to handpick the people. Basically, what I was saying is I want to do skill set match. So we want to define what it is we have to accomplish and then match that with a skill set that has the highest probability of achieving that, okay? And he said, "Well, people are all over the site." And I said, "Well, I'm not prepared to risk failure because you give me the wrong people." Now, I covered this in my workshop. The biggest problem project managers face in today's environment is being assigned the wrong people and not being able to do anything about that. We work in a matrix environment. We have resource pools. Their job is to keep a flat histogram, so they give you body count. They don't necessarily give you the right skill set. So I said, I can't do that. I want to be able to handpick the team. Well, he was a little concerned about that, but then he said, okay. Well, I'm thinking to myself, airplane, car, I'm going to go for everything. And I thought, no, let's stay true to the effort. He said, "What's the last thing you want? The third thing?" And I said, "Well, this actually is probably an extremely important thing for what we're going to try to do, is I want the team to be co-located." Now, he said, he was a smart guy, but he was acting stupid. He said, "What do you mean by co-located?" I said, "I want the team together in the same building, in the same place, so that we can have spontaneous communication. We can have random opportunities to solve them problems." I said, "I want everybody together." He said, "That's impossible. We can't do that." And I said, "I'm sure you can, Jack." And I walked over to his window, and I pointed across, beautiful lake, really pretty setting, beautiful lake. I looked over, and there, I said, "You see that building over there?" He said, "Yeah, that's our new R&D building. We're just moving people from Germany to occupy that building to do a lot of really intense R&D work." And I said, "So that's your new building?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "That is a nice building." I said, I really like that building. I got the lake there, very kind of a relaxed atmosphere. I really like that building. That's the building I want. And he held his ground. He said, "I can't do it." He said, "If I told Jerry Muller he wasn't getting his building, there'd be hell to pay." And he said, "So I'm sorry." And I said, "But," he said, you're still on, right?" I said, No, I'm not. I'm not going to risk my reputation when I don't have all the tools that I need. I said, "But if I can find someone," and I actually said this, "foolish enough to sign up, I'll recommend them to you." But I said, "For me, I'm out." It's kind of like Shark Tank. I'm out. Okay? And I got back in my car and drove off to Columbus, Ohio, about a 3-hour drive. And that was on a Friday afternoon. And Monday morning, I get a call from Jack. And Jack says, "You know that building you're talking about?" I said, "Oh, I do indeed." He said, "It's yours. You can have the building." Damn, he's called my bluff. He's going to expect delivery now. And so we got busy creating a team, thinking of what Carol said. I've been with Carol 3 times now. Every time I'm with her, I hear something new that I should have been paying attention to. And we started to create that kind of an environment. So let me give you the short story. We did it. We did it. This team we ended up at 203, ended up at 202 because one guy got hit by a truck. So we got reduction in force, so to speak. And we finished the project in 18 months. 3-year project, 18 months. Project people that were on that project worked 14 hours a day, 7 days a week for 18 months. No overtime requested, no bonuses promised. They were committed. What you need to be successful in project management is committed. That means innovative. That means creative. And what I've heard today, it's kind of gone in cycle. We went from WBS to earned value to then along came Agile. And you can see the interest in Agile has waned a little based on our survey we did yesterday. And now we have, what is this called? AI. Oh my God, AI. That's the answer to all our problems. With AI, all our projects will be successful. No, they're not. It's another tool that project managers have to decide, what can this tool do for me? What do I need in order to do my job more effectively? That AI can help. And after AI will come quantum computing. And after quantum computing will come the next wave. So you've got to understand it's cyclic. It's never static. Project management is never static. And so in order to be effective, I have to stay ahead of the power curve. That's why these kinds of programs are so important, to give you information that says, oh, this is what's out there now. I should pay attention to this, because it's not because it's going to deliver a project, it's going to make my job easier. And that's what we need to take advantage of, is that we can understand that all these tools and techniques, I can literally throw them away and still be effective, but it might take longer. It might take more work to get people committed. So buy-in is so important. We don't spend enough time getting buy-in. And so when you look at project management as an association, we need to spend more time getting your buy-in that PMI has something to offer you. Because it does. I wouldn't be a member for 46 years if I didn't think there was something in it for me. And it ain't money, because I don't get paid to do this. I'm doing this because I think it's important. Someone asked me once, how are we doing on time? I always have to ask that. I'll try to, have I got 5 minutes? Can I take 5 minutes? Okay, because I got to be somewhere to teach this again. So if I look at this, someone asked me on LinkedIn, talking about your investment in the chapters, and 15 to 25 bucks, and another 139 to be a PMI member. So it's 150 bucks. They want to know, do I feel like I've gotten my value? Because we're on a big value kick right now. So that question came out. Have you gotten 46 years worth of value out of your membership? So I thought, well, the best way to find out is quantify what my membership has cost me, and then make that decision. So I did that. I took, wasn't AI, I did it with a calculator. I took the amount of money I'd paid for dues, multiplied by 46 years. Here's the answer. $85,000. $85,000. I told my kids that, they almost crapped. They said, why didn't I get that money? I could have used that money. I could have paid half of a year of tuition with that money. Oh, but I got so much more value. So did I get the value? Absolutely. Will I continue to get it? Absolutely. My life, I'm already past my life expectancy, and I got one more leg to go. So I think I'm going to make it. And so I spend my life trying to convince people that they should invest in PMI as well. And I believe in it wholeheartedly. I couldn't fake it. Unfortunately, I would never be able to do that. Will I ever stop? I doubt it. Do I complain about some things PMI does? Of course I do. If I didn't do that, they'd say, did Lee die? Because I always have comments, I have observations, and people take it for heart. One of the things that's beautiful, I'm closing out. One of the things that's beautiful about PMI, especially with the new, I hate to use the word regime, but that's what it is they listen. They listen. And you can see Luann's she's dangerous. Luann is dangerous. You might think she's just chatting and she's soaking it in. She's remembered things that the members think might be important. And being a member of the board, she can actually impact those things. So that's another reason we come out and talk, is that we get to talk to you. Not you talk to us. We get to talk to you about what PMI can do and what it will add in the way of value to your organization. So you've got to sell your management. Some of you have done that already, but you've got to convince management the return on investment, the 85 grand they're going to spend if you last 46 years is going to be a worthwhile investment. And I think that's the issue. Now, quickly, all the stuff that's out here, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, I am sick and tired of hearing the words AI. Good God, there's other things in the world, people. But AI is the hot topic right now. And so it's the issue that I have to stay ahead of. So I'm always constantly looking ahead, but I'm not spending all my time out there. I'm making sure I capitalize on the old before I convert to the new. So when we look at transformation projects, be careful. Don't rush to transformation. Make it be a thoughtful transformation, and it will pay dividends to you. All right, any questions? Quick questions, because they get very upset with me. Questions? Any questions? No questions. Okay. No. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You know, we used to give out T-shirts. A lot of times you get T-shirts. I have 117 T-shirts, and they're all too small. So this is a good thing for me. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, my friends. Well, there you have it. You were able to listen to our friend Lee. You were able to see his brilliance. You were able to see everything that he shared about his journey and about how project management has evolved to where we are today. I want to encourage you, for those of you who were looking forward to the interview, why don't you go ahead and drop some questions? Maybe after the fact, that will be fine. But if you drop some questions, Lee will get to those questions, and we will ensure that we answer those questions for you on our very next interview. Okay? So that's it, my friends. That's it for today. Thank you very much. As I said, there's no cause for concern. Lee is well. He's just been a very good stakeholder. I'll let him explain when we have the interview. All right? Thank you very much. Speak to you soon. Bye for now.